So today, what we're going to do is we're going to check the float height on these Keihin carburetors, and we're going to do a bench sync of the throttle butterfly, just so that they are ready in kind of a base state to go back on the bike and get it rebuilt. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to tackle is the float height. So to do that, we need to take the float balls off and the gaskets. We measure from the surface of the carb without the gasket in place. So float ball and gasket, float ball and gasket off. Okay. The same on the other carb. Float ball and gasket off. Okay. So what you want is you want it in this orientation so that the float is hanging freely, pressing on the float needle, just on the spring on the inside there. Okay, and where we're measuring from is we're measuring from this gasket surface here to the top of the float, and the measurement that we need is 20 mils. So that's what it says in the Haynes manual. So we set the caliper to 20 mil. Okay, pop it down there. And you can see that the float didn't quite fit the caliper there. It's pressing the float down, so we need to adjust. The way that you do that, we're going to remove the pin, take the float out, and then to raise the float, we're going to press the tang here in the middle down, and to reduce the height of the float, we're going to press the tang out. Okay, so we need the float to come inwards a smidge. So we're going to press the tang out. So we take the pin out, and release the float. Okay, and we want to lower the height of the float, so we're going to press this little tang upwards, just as a little flathead screwdriver, only ever so slightly. Okay, and then the process is we slip the float back on and measure again. Take the caliper again, still set to 20 mil. And we need to move it a bit more. So, repeat the process. Okay, so float back on. Hanging freely. Now it's underneath the caliper. I still think we can probably adjust a little bit more. I think I've gone a bit too far. So one final adjustment and I think we'll be ready. So after one final adjustment, I think we're about there. So I get my digital caliper again, 20 mils. There we go. So it's not pushing the float down and the float is not loose underneath. So that one is done. So gasket back on, float ball back on, pull the cap. Okay, only time will tell when we actually get fuel in it and see whether it leaks or not. So onto the second. Exactly the same process with this carburettor. I think that'll do for now. As I say, the only way to check for sure is when you get fuel in and see whether it overflows or not. So what it tends to do is it comes out that overflow down and squirts all over your lovely bike frame. So I should be doing that in the vise before we get there. So there's the floats done. Next job, I'm going to get the air mixture screws in the right place. Last video I mentioned 2.5 turns being a good ballpark. I've since read up and it's actually 1.5 turns. So I'm going to seat these. So this is the way that you set these, and the only way to get this right, I found I use a colourtune. So once the bike's running, I use the colourtune into the cylinders and get the and check it that way. You can also do the idle drop procedure, but I've never had much luck with that. So we're going to screw him all the way back in until he seats, and we're going to do that carefully. There we go. Notice I've marked with a Sharpie, and that's just to help me count. So we're going to go 1.5 turns out. That's half a turn, 1 turn, 1.5 turns. Okay, repeat the process with the other carburettor. So seat it first, gently. It's seated, so 1.5 turns out from there. That's half, 1, 1.5. Okay, so there's the air mixture screws. Next task is the throttle butterfly, so the opening of the throttle. I'm going to get those set so they're opening at the same time. So again, so when it goes back on the bike, we're at a good place to get it started, and then we just fiddle with each screw on each carburettor until we get a good idle on the bike. Okay, so for this procedure, we're adjusting the throttle butterfly here, so the opening here at idle. So on the left hand side of the carb here, as you're looking at it, we've got the throttle screw, so the idle screw. It's just here on the side. That's on a spring, and that adjusts where this arm comes to rest and where the throttle butterfly sits. On the right hand side of the carb, you've got the where the throttle goes. So the throttle cable goes, and you've got 2 lines that come into each carburettor. This one, 1 and 2, the one, and the final adjustment is you make on those when that's on the bike. That's on the throttle opening. So for now, we're going to deal with the idle screw. And what I'm going to use for this is a flathead screwdriver. and a small piece of wire. So I'm using a guitar string. So this is the low E string on a guitar. Basically the procedure is this. So we're going to open the throttle butterfly and we're going to pop the wire in down here at the bottom. Now what you'll see, which you won't probably be able to see on this video, but I'll see if I can do a close-up of it for you, is on the bottom of here you've got two very tiny holes. That's what lets the fuel through on the slow jet and the idle jet. So you can see just there, just here and here, just either side of the guitar string that I've put in, you can see the two tiny holes. Basically I'm popping the guitar string in between those two holes in order to set the butterfly. Okay, and once you've got that in there, we're just going to take hold of that and apply a bit of pressure. Okay, so at the moment the idle screw here on the side of the carburettor is not touching this peg at all, so it's not applying any pressure to the throttle butterfly whatsoever. So the throttle butterfly, the spring mechanism, is holding this guitar string really tight. So we are going to, just with the Phillips screwdriver, we're going to tighten that down until it starts to make contact. Okay, I'm just making contact with that now. Now very slowly we're going to tug on the guitar string, apply some pressure, and we're going to slowly turn the idle screw at the side, and at the point where it releases pressure on the guitar string, we'll take that as set. There we go. So that there is set. Just as I did with the air mixture screw, I'm just going to mark one side of the idle screw with a Sharpie, so when I get it on the bike I know how far I've turned it one way, how far I've turned it the other way when I'm trying to set the idle. Okay, so all we have to do is rinse and repeat on the other carb. Both carburetors now in a good ballpark for getting a good running on the bike when we get fixed. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I tend to find carburetors on motorcycles a little bit like black magic. You fiddle and fiddle and fiddle and spend forever tinkering with them, and then all of a sudden everything comes together and it seems to just run right. These were not running right on the bike before. As I said in the previous video, I think that was to do with the size of the jet that I had in. I had a 130, and I've since found that actually for the 450, standard size was 125, so I was actually too big anyway. However, on my 450, it's running pod filters and non-standard exhausts. Even though the exhausts are kind of the same kind of style as the original bike, they're not standard. However, so I've dropped the jet size to a 120. So once we get the bike running, hopefully this bench sync here has given us a good place to start. So we've got the float height to factory standard, we've got the throttle butterfly opening synchronized between the two carbs, so it's roughly the same. As I say, we'll need to fiddle with those once we get the bike going, equally with the air mixture screws. So that's to factory standard is 1.5 turns, gets you in the ballpark. But again, we'll need to check the air mixture with the fuel. And I tend to use the colourtune for that. I tend to find that works quite well. The last bit of synchronisation that we have to do before we fire it up, we have to do once the carburettors are on the bike, and that's to do with the throttle action of the throttle. So you have to adjust on the bike here where the throttle lever's attached to the carburetors. Anyway, I'll show you that when we get there. So hopefully you found that mildly interesting or useful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Leave a comment and consider subscribing, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.